Hello, I'm Gareth.
And I'm Shane, and welcome to Building Business Resilience.
This is a podcast from Sanctuary Financial Planning, which helps growth business owners and social media influencers achieve financial independence.
We're two passionate financial planners on a mission to seek out new ideas, tips and tricks to help you take control of your finances and run better businesses.
We delve into the true goals and aspirations of our guests in order to provide you with some real value and positivity.
Nothing outrageous, clear, simple, solid financial solutions. We also have a YouTube series to accompany this, and details will be at the end of the show. So let's move on to our guest.
In today's episode, we're talking to Daniel Perrin. Dan is a chartered certified accountant and chartered tax advisor with over 15 years experience working predominantly with owner-managed businesses. He is managing director of Daniel Perrin & Co Limited, located in Neath, South Wales, and deals with clients across the UK. The practice also provides tax consultancy work into a number of other accountants in the UK. Dan's speciality is tax planning for clients, providing business advisory services in a number of key fields. The practice works with a number of businesses to embrace cloud-based accountancy tools, enabling them to run more efficiently. Today, we're talking about self-employed tax deferral, income support, universal credit, the furlough scheme, other points relating to current measures introduced by the government. I do need to stress that this information is up to date as of the 30th of March 2020, but it's changing on a daily basis. But the general advice and guidance is relevant throughout the coronavirus crisis.
Hi Dan, how are you?
Hi, very good.
Dan, is it a thing that, as good and all as social media is, that those that are not as qualified as, say, the likes of you, scaremonger everyone else because they tell people what they heard from John down in the pub, and then it's sent out on social media and everyone begins to panic? Or, as we've seen elsewhere, everyone thinks that they can get the earth, moon, the stars. People need to realize that social media is for, taking nice pictures. Proper advice needs to be coming from the likes of yourself and not from friends of friends.
Yeah, I think the other problem we've hit in is people are sharing anything on social media, Facebook and things like that. But The important thing is that, what I would put on social media site is links directly to the Gov site because it changes. And I think the biggest problem we got at the moment is the information out there is just guidance. And I'm saying that to clients, other accountants, anybody's asking for advice, because it's guidance and it's limited guidance. There is clarification in certain areas coming every day, but some of the stuff, I've got to put my hand up and say, we don't know until that point is actually cleared up, and given a bit more information on.
Dan, have you found you've had to work any differently in the last couple of weeks? Because I know from our point of view, from the financial planning side, even though we weren't remotely operated, a lot of our work was based with technology, and we've embraced it in the last year and a half. So when we had to move out, it literally was just grab the bits and pieces, and we could work remotely from wherever we wanted to. Is that the same as you, that you can just do it wherever you want now? And has the work that you've known in the past changed in any way from what it was 4 or 5 weeks ago?
Yeah, I've been fortunate enough. Like yourselves, I've invested in technology for the last 2 or 3 years, if not more. And what it's meant is that I can theoretically pick the practice up and move it to wherever I need to move to, using secure cloud servers, using technology. We've got Dropbox, we've got OneDrive, we've got secure portals, and it just means you can literally work from anywhere.
Let's get on to why we're here and what's on everyone's mind who's going to be listening and watching. We're in the midst of a coronavirus pandemic. It's unknown territory. Not only is it affecting the health of people, but it is now starting to affect businesses, and it's going to be quite devastating for some small and medium-sized businesses around the UK. And in fairness to the Chancellor, he has stepped up and, he's put some big things out there at very kind of short notice. And I know he's been under a lot of criticism from a lot of people, but in fairness, I think what they've done so far has been really good, positive. And at the end of the day, unfortunately, not all of us will find something that will help us, but there's a lot out there. So we'll touch on a few of the kind of things. Self-employed tax deferral. So income tax payments due in July 2020 under the self-assessment system may be deferred until January 2021. Is there anything you want to touch on with that, Dan?
Yeah, the one thing I'm stressing to anybody is that it's a deferral. Don't get into your head that it's something that's going to get written off. So, what I'm saying to people is if you've budgeted the money to one side, you've got that money to use, please pay it, or at least part pay it, because what you don't want to be doing is pushing it off to January when you've got another balancing payment due, and, you're going to get yourself into more trouble.
Another one's self-employed income support scheme. After they announced they were going to put a package together for employed people, the Chancellor was keen to assure self-employed workers that they had not been forgotten. I know this one caused a lot of uproar, and I know you, Dan, had a lot of calls and a lot of messages about this one. So the self-employment support scheme will pay a taxable grant of self-employed people equivalent to 80% of the average monthly profits over the last 3 years. That's £2,500. And I know there's a lot about, with regards to profits, got to be under 50,000 and so on and so forth. There's a lot more detail on the .gov website for this, but does anyone want to touch on that then?
Yeah, the key thing I'm saying to people is, don't flood your accountants for the last 3 years, because that's the one thing that they could do without at this time of all the problems. What you've got to think of is HMRC are due to contact people to tell them if they're eligible for the grant. Okay. I can't give you an idea of timescale because we just don't know. But those profit figures that you're looking at, they've already got. If you're up to date with your tax returns, if everything's in, then you're fine. They know exactly what you've earned. The other thing that they've actually turned around and said is if you have missed that deadline back in January, you've got till, I think it's about the 20th of April, there or thereabouts, to get that return in, and get that return in, because if you haven't submitted it, then you may not be eligible to get any grants or anything. And it's the 3 years prior to this current tax year. So don't rush to get your tax return for 1920 done. If everything's ready, that's fine. It can be done, but it is the 3 years prior that they're going to take, or less if you haven't been trading for 3 years.
Universal credit. Self-employed workers who have seen a significant reduction in earnings are able to claim universal credit provided they meet the usual eligibility criteria.
Yeah, that one's an interesting one. I've got to be honest. The universal credit, I've got a couple of clients who rang me last week, and they've actually tried to apply for universal credits because at that point that's all they were eligible for. And they've literally gone onto the website at 2 o'clock in the afternoon to make the application, and still been there 2 o'clock in the morning. Right. So what I'm trying to say is be patient with the systems. They're doing the best they can to process them. But obviously, if there's long queues there, I think one client went in the queue and there was about 65,000 people in front of them. So it's just a case of keep persevering, and you will get there. They will assess it on all of your household income and other factors as well. So the important thing you've got to look at is, be honest with them, because the last thing you want is give them wrong information, because it will come back on you, and see what you're eligible for.
So next, what I'll touch on, I will do a separate video on this, is mortgage payment holidays. It's one that's come about. It's not just for residential, it's for buy-to-let landlords as well. They can apply for it. But I'm going to do a separate video on it because there's a few things people need to be aware of. And if I'm honest, I would say if you don't need to take it, don't take it. Mm-hmm. But, if you really do feel you need to, the option's there. Just need to check that it doesn't affect your credit rating.
A lot of people don't grasp that you can defer the payment of something, but that doesn't mean you have got rid of it. And that goes for the tax or the mortgage holiday. It is just a deferment of payment, not a cancellation of those payments that you're due. And as much as people understand the English language, I think they need to realise that, as Dan said, if you can make a payment now and you've budgeted for it, get it paid, because we don't know what's going to happen in the future.
Yeah, business as usual. It's not there to kind of use for other kind of means. Let's be sensible, and probably this is a good time to look at your finances and say, well, actually, what have I been spending my money on, and what can I cut back on, and be a bit more sensible. Another one then down, which we come across, is Her Majesty Revenue and Customs time to pay service. If you're self-employed, struggling with your finances and have outstanding tax liabilities, you may be eligible to receive tax support from HMRC's time to pay service.
Yeah, they are being a bit more generous than they would at normal times. The important thing is be honest with them. They've time to pay sort of service will link in a bit with your VAT deferment, because if you've got a VAT liability due within the next few months, then you can get an automatic deferral on that. So don't waste time trying to get hold of them, asking for time to pay if it's VAT. you read the guidance on the Gov site, which is changing daily, but you just check you're within the date scale that they're offering and you've got that deferment. But a little tip, if you're a VAT registered business, cancel any direct debits, because they will still charge the direct debits even though the deferment's in place. They've openly said that and invited businesses to cancel them.
Okay.
But other taxes, obviously, just being sensible,
Sure.
You can get, again, it comes back to that deferment. You might be able to get some time to pay on your PAYE, but it's just a case of you've got to catch up with it at some point. And you use whatever tools are out there, but don't stretch yourself too thinly.
I think a key thing from this is that, a lot of these measures are not free, and we're going to pay for it at some point.
Yes.
So I think that's the realism here is, there's been a reduction in corporation tax over the years, and so on and so forth. But we've got to bear in mind that once we come out of this, these things are going to be paid. They have to be paid back somehow. So the Chancellor will probably make some extreme tweaks in the future.
And I think, it's just something that's going to take years to get over, I think, and something we're going to be paying for in 4 or 5 years' time.
Dan, big question. Loads and loads of people don't understand the word furloughed. When will businesses see the payments for furloughed employees into their bank accounts?
Basically, the guidance is saying that those payments should be made end of April. But what we've got to remember, and I'm saying this to any employer out there, that HMRC systems are geared for taking tax, but not actually paying it back to businesses. Yeah. And that's from their own guidance, not from anything else. And so they're working towards the end of April. But what we've got to bear in mind is there's a lot of information that's got to be uploaded every 3 weeks through a portal, which they haven't yet developed. Okay. So they've got to be able to get all the information, process it, get the business's bank details, and get that by backs to the business. So what I'm trying to say to businesses is, if you think cash is going to be tight, then you need to be thinking about loans, or basically thinking about using any savings just to keep the business going. Okay. You need to look at your finance options and not leave yourself short in case you work into the end of April. It could be May, it could be June.
How are the self-employed profits calculated for these purposes?
Yeah, the guidance is quite specific on this. For the self-employed profits, they're working on the basis you've been self-employed for 3 full tax years, tax year 18-19 and the 2 years prior. What they're basically doing is taking an average of the profits for those 3 years. If you're a relatively new business and 18-19, for example, is your first year, then they'll just take that 1 year. But typically it's 3 years. And the important thing is make sure they've got accurate information on your state of affairs, your tax returns are all in, because this is the system that will be used to calculate it.
What if I'm relatively new at this business? Is there anything I can claim, or what can I claim?
Yeah, that's a key question. I mean, if you're a new business and started trading in 1920, based on the government's guidance as it is now, the guidance is saying you have to have submitted an 18-19 tax return, which takes you up to the 5th of April 19. So if you started trading after then, if we follow the guidance as it's written, you wouldn't be eligible for anything. Unless, of course, you may fall in the category of these £10,000 grants or £25,000 grants. And what I'm directing people to do is wait to see if the local authority contact you on those, because they'll administer those. If not, then you need to think about perhaps contacting them or looking if they've got an online form that you can just fill out just to see if you're eligible for something.
How easy is it to claim universal credits?
I think if you can get on the system, it can be a bit easier, but with the floods of people trying to do it at the moment, the procedures are fairly easy, but what I'm saying to people is make sure you've got everything to hand. If you're going to spend 4 hours to get on a system and you haven't got any of the information to hand, that's a waste of time. Get on there, give them all the information, they'll probably invite you for a telephone interview at some point, and also make sure you've got your household income, because a lot of people are assuming I'm going to get universal credits, but then their partners' wives are earning over the threshold and they're entitled to nothing. So just have all that information. If there's a calculator on the site, put that through first to see if you're entitled to anything.
Okay, brilliant. Do directors get SSP, statutory sick pay?
That's a good question, because there's a lot of controversy around this one at the moment. I mean, if we go back to Companies Act, I mean, the director of a company is an officer and, strictly speaking, could be construed as being an employee. So by virtue of that, if they're earning over the relevant limit, then which is just under £120, then they can make a statutory sick pay claim like anybody else.
And what is happening with the wrongful trading rules for companies at this moment in time?
Yeah, this is a good question because a lot of people are getting worried about this. Typically what would happen is if you wrongfully trade in, so in other words, you've got debts and you reasonably can't afford to pay them, then you should close the business at that point. Okay. And if we did that, we'd have a problem in this country at the moment. So what the government have said is they're relaxing some of the rules on this to enable businesses to either take a sabbatical from trading and still be able to come back in, trade in the future, or basically carry on trading as best they can. And if they incur some debts along the way, as long as the reasonable expectation is that they're still going to be trading in the future, the rules aren't going to be as strict as they were. And there's a little bit of guidance out there on the Gov site around that. And it's definitely worth anybody with a limited company, definitely worth having a read of that.
It's interesting times, and we're strong enough, I think, as a nation to get through this. But we've got to all stay positive and stick together, and and the big thing I see a lot around at the moment is be kind. I think that's a big thing, because there's still people out there wanting to shout and scream at people, but we're all in this together. Let's plough on, let's be positive, and let's kind of move forward.
If we pull together as a nation, we can get through it quicker.
A few things I've picked up on there, Dan, is HMRC seems to be stretched at the moment. Please don't get annoyed with them. Bide your time. Get the iPad out if you're on hold and watch Netflix, because you could be on hold for quite a while. But everyone is trying to access the same type of systems at the moment, so it is just a numbers game. Understanding is easy, doing is hard. We know we have to change our ways, but it's going to be more difficult to change it. And finally, don't listen. I was going to say to the man in the pub, but as the pubs are closed at the moment, don't listen to the man in the pub when you go down to the pub eventually, or social media. If you're unsure of something and you want clarification, go on to the correct websites, or alternatively, get hold of you, Dan, if you're happy enough to take calls from people. And if you want to drop your number and that at the end, we can give that out to people if that's okay with you.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm here to support the small businesses and help them, small and large businesses, as much as you can. And the important thing is just getting through it. There is light at the end of the tunnel, and just keep checking that guidance, because it is regularly updated. Yeah. So don't work on something you've read last week, because the chances are it's totally changed.
We'll put some show notes at the end anyway, where if anyone wants to contact Dan, they can do. We'll also link through to some of the .gov websites, also to myself and Shane. And if anyone's got any questions, kind of pick the phone. We've actually got a link on our website, which we'll put on there, where you can book a reassurance call with us as well, if anyone wants to kind of do that, where we can chat through just general stuff. But yeah, it's interesting times. And the big thing, stay positive. That's what we're doing. Everyone's got to find new ways of working. Luckily, ourselves, including you, Dan, are very modern thinking businesses, so we're kind of all set up ready to do anything digital, and we can continue as we kind of are. But the big thing is, stay safe. Your health is paramount at the moment, and the government will help us out.
Dan, thanks very much for taking the time today. I appreciate we both appreciate you spending a few minutes chatting to us. I can imagine that the phone is on silent and is buzzing as we speak. So we'll let you get back to it, and hopefully, if anyone needs to speak to you, they can get direct contact with you.
Oh, my pleasure.
That was a great chat with Dan. Some key takeaway points from that episode: seek advice from qualified people, self-employed support schemes, mortgage payment deferments, HMRC timeline payments, and what help is out there for the self-employed. Head over to our website, www.sanfp.co.uk, or check our YouTube channel, search Sanctuary Financial Planning for more information and insights. That's it for this episode. Next, we're talking about how to keep healthy and well during lockdown with performance coach Tristan Bevan. You can hear that wherever you get your podcasts. Plus, don't forget to click subscribe to get all the latest episodes as soon as they arrive. Until next time, thanks for listening.